Day 203 of the Ukrainian war map, also known as Russia's devastating invasion of Ukraine. Jozzy here, and today is another quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine today. And as always, I like to start off with the Russian military losses, so I'll pull those ones up. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong ones there. And we'll go across to the Russian losses. Here we go. So we'll start off with the Russian military personnel losses. So sitting at an additional 350 from yesterday. So 53,650. Before I go down to the hardware losses, I'll just mention on this topic of the prisoners of war, because there are certainly a few comments about this. This is not an accumulative figure. It doesn't actually change on this report here because of the nature of prisoners of war. Sometimes each state or country doesn't want to advise exactly how many they have. This figure can actually go down because of prisoner swaps and things of that nature there too. So you're not going to get a real lot of data out of the prisoners of war here, at least on this location here that we're looking at. Now, let's see. So we have the Russian military personnel losses. So starting off with the armored combat vehicles, an additional 3. So a little bit slower than previous days. Next up, tanks, a good deal, 5 additional losses there. And artillery, 11 losses there. And interestingly, yeah, quite a few on the aircraft and chopper side of things. So 2 each for the day there. Now, we'll move across back to Kharkiv on the map, where we'll start with a photo of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meeting troops at the recently liberated key logistical or strategic city of Izium. Also, we've got a little bit of footage of the border of Kharkiv up the very north, so a bit of a liberation border video there too. Now, you cannot tell the full story of Kharkiv without telling the story of Kherson firstly. It appears now more than ever that Ukraine's military persuaded the Russian command that Kherson would be its counter-offensive's primary, meaning its main goal in the south. Russia then took the bait, sent 35 battalion tactical groups to Kherson, which is thereabouts 25,000 additional Russian troops, stationed between a river and a front line. So if I just zoom out and show you, here's the river and here's the front line. So basically stuck on an island far, far away from the real action essentially. And then like a lion patiently waiting to strike, Ukraine had gone in for the kill to the north. No pun intended, unfortunately. And like a gazelle does, the Russian units flocked away. Many of them did anyway. Okay, now enough of the fluff there. But it's actually looking more and more like this was by design by the Ukrainian military strategists to actually successfully misdirect Russian forces. And the outcome, about 3,800 square kilometers or about 1,500 square miles of the Kharkiv Oblast has been liberated now during Ukraine's actual ongoing counteroffensive there. So still going on, and the vast majority, this is actually, it's always an outdated map, but the vast majority of the Kharkiv Oblast has been liberated now. And add to that, liberated more than about 150,000 residents in the remainder of the Oblast too. Now, looking ahead into the future for this region, President Zelensky ordered to ensure the protection of the border with Russia, really so it can't happen again, so they can't invade. Bit of a blitzkrieg from Russia in the beginning. Now, here's the thing. Kharkiv, the Oblast, actually borders the Donbass, so in particular the Luhansk Oblast. And as a result, there is some artillery shelling from both sides near or around the borders there. And in this general region, actually more around Kupiansk, the Ukrainian forces reported shooting down an Iranian-made Shahed 136 UAV near Kupiansk there, during Ukraine's counteroffensive. So Ukraine is now supplying, Iran is now supplying Russia drones to use in Ukraine. And hopefully that this is a sign of more downings to come. Now, there's no shortage of captured hardware, Russian donated hardware to Ukraine, military hardware in the Kharkiv Oblast, and it keeps showing up. So in particular in Izium, right here, a Russian Mr. S self-propelled howitzer with quite the crude makeshift cope cage on this one. Now, Russian forces started to realize their vehicles were pretty vulnerable to Ukrainian short-range portable missile systems, so the Russians were forced to grab whatever they could, including this ghastly contraption of a design that I legitimately think was used from a discarded fence from the side of the road. And unfortunately, makeshift monstrosities like these have been found to be largely ineffective. And we'll move on. So sometimes it might be good to focus on some more of the high-end captured equipment in Ukraine. Like this Soviet-era ST-68U Russian modernized air surveillance radar system that was left behind but kind of fell over too. And it reminds me of a bit of a new saying that's getting quite common enough in this war now. And it goes something like, Russian $5 million air defense radar system, 18-year-old Russian conscript driver. Which brings me to the next Ukrainian score, where the capture of a high-value Russian equipment continues to turn up. Seen here is a R93 4BMV jammer station designed to block or interfere with wireless communications and other various radio signal jamming. Now, this piece of equipment is particularly alluring because it's designed to jam enemy satellite communications, of which sometimes these are the only viable communications available on the battlefield. So very, very cool there. And just lastly, in this region I'll mention today, you can tell it was a vicious criminal Russian occupation when the liberated people of the town of Balaklia, right there, for example, are just so relieved to be rid of their former oppressors. Which means we start to move down to the ever-contested Donbass region here, where Russia controls about 78%, or actually probably a little bit less now, of these two combined oblasts. Of course, to claim any real strategic victory in the war, the Russian mindset is that they have to take the remainder of the Donbass area, this white area here. But it seems as if Russia is getting a little bit more realistic with its own expectations and goals on the battlefield, as it pulls Russian forces from the north almost completely and many from the south now. Which means it appears Russia wants to condense and fortify most of its army personnel forces to the front line of the Donbass here now. As it really seems, the Russian forces seem to have realized they cannot hope to hold a front line that extends 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers across Ukraine. In fact, I dare to say that it's a bit longer than that. In fact, probably a lot longer. It depends how you define the front line. Let's use the ruler here. This will not be exact because of all the crevices. But I would say Sevastopol and Crimea, where there's air defenses going, that is really part of the front line too. So let's give this a red hot go. If I can be just delicate and precise enough with the mouse. Let's go all the way up to Kharkiv and the border. In fact, here's the thing. There's lots of shelling from the Russian Federation over the border here at Sumy and Chernihiv. So let's just keep this basic. And it's probably going to be a lot longer. But here we go, 1,611 kilometers. That's almost exactly 1,000 miles. In fact, the real figure is more closer to, say, 2,000 kilometers. And say that'd be about 1,200, 1,150 miles. Because if I was to actually zoom in, I need to, like I say, go around the crevices more, which I'm just not going to do for the purposes of this video, but just keep it like that. So it's very interesting stuff, really. The whole point of this is that this is spreading Russia's resources quite thin. They may have started to, say, realize this and causing them to pull back to the Donbass to get that simple victory long term, which seems less and less plausible at this point. And never forget, standard offensive, defensive war battle logic dictates the 3-to-1 ratio of needing 3 invading soldiers for every 1 defending soldier. So Russia has been very well reported to have a great deal of manpower shortages. So this is hard for them to muster up as well. Then we'll move across to other areas a little bit further down south. So Zaporizhia, the Zaporizhia Oblast. In Melitopol, the mayor of Melitopol mentioned there were explosions heard at a Russian base here, so in the Russian-occupied region of Melitopol. Now, reports have said that Russia is actually pulling closer to the eastern Donbass area and attempting to reinforce frontline positions closer to this area now, including Tokmak and Polody. So we'll see how that one goes there. Additionally, and somewhat conversely, the mayor of the Melitopol city down here said that columns of Russian military hardware were detected further south and moving further south down to Shona, a village technically in the Kherson Oblast, but quite south next to Crimea. Now, Shona, if we zoom in, there we are. So Shona, it's no stranger to Ukrainian missile strikes, particularly this bridge here of very important strategic value for both sides, really, in a way, because one wants to knock it out and the other one wants to keep it there. And these roads have actually been knocked out or damaged by the Ukrainians about a month or so ago now, and I suspect that's going to happen again. So it's really sometimes one of the few ways from this side of the north to get down to one of the main highways down to the Crimean Peninsula. Okay, then we move to the Kherson region, the Kherson Oblast here. So the Ukrainian aviation crew conducted 12 airstrikes at Russian troops near to the midriff of the front line here in the last 24-hour reporting period. And the air defenses shot down an Su-25, Russian Su-25, and an Su-24 M plane, and 1 helicopter, plus a drone as well. So that's where these figures back here for the day start to add up. This mostly happened on the Kherson front, in fact. Now, this next bit of news always seems like a bit of old hat, or maybe that I'm repeating myself, but heavy explosions were reported in the Kakhovka district here. Now, the Ukrainian military struck the Kakhovka bridge in Kherson again, halting Russian forces' repairs of the bridge. So what's really happening here is systematic constant strikes from the UAF, so the Russian armed forces, striking out supply lines, command points, and in particular ammunition depots around this area too. And I've said it a few times now in this video, or once in this video and many times in other ones. So we had a whole buildup of Russian forces in this north bank of the Dnipro River. This happened, let's say around end of July, early August, late August as well. So the Russian forces took the bait, believing that Ukraine was having its primary counteroffensive here. And it took a good couple of weeks from a military logistics point of view, in fact, to get the Russians all the way here. So they thought they were going to have a big fight here. They actually took Ukraine at their word and mustered all the forces they could. And then they just were kind of like sitting ducks for 2 different reasons. One, they weren't protecting the north side that's since all but been taken up. And 2, the Ukrainian forces took out the Antonivsky Bridge, the Rail Bridge, the Novokakhovka Bridge, all of that there, really decreasing supply lines from the south to the north to supply these troops, somewhat sort of really stuck on this island of sorts here. Now, it's never always great news. Mykolaiv, for instance, the Russian forces are actually heavily shelling Mykolaiv, particularly overnight last night. Now, there is some technology that can overcome this, such as counter-battery radar detection systems. So they pick up the general coordinates or location of the artillery fired from, let's say it could be fired from the North Bank, but it could also be fired from somewhere along the south bank of the river as well. So 60, 70 kilometers, that sort of thing. So these counter-battery radar systems could actually be used to, and the thing is, Ukraine doesn't have many of them yet. I mean, to be honest, they've got about 30 of them that they received from the US. They do need a lot more though, but over time, yeah, we do hope that Mykolaiv and really indeed all regions don't have to put up with anywhere near as much, if any at all, shelling from the Russian side. So we'll move down a little bit to Crimea, where there's been a quote-unquote urgent evacuation of Russian proxies, intelligence officers, and military commanders, which is really taking place, the main intelligence directorate said. So basically in the news today, we've got retreaters, Russian forces retreating from the Kherson region, a little bit down south, Melitopol down south, and Crimea. Lots of key individuals moving across to the Russian Federation. So that is sometimes what a withdrawal looks like. It's sort of a pullback from all directions. But probably re-administered sooner or later all to the Donbass region, which is Russia's really probably only hope long term now. Now we'll go to some news. Since the start of the full-scale invasion from Russia into Ukraine since February, the US has actually provided Ukraine with $15.2 billion in military aid. In fact, in total, they've supplied them $40 billion of aid. So about a third of the aid was just military. You would think it was more, but it turned out to be a little bit less. And on the back of that news, the White House stated that US may provide the Ukraine with an additional security assistance package, again within the upcoming days. This happens every week or so though, really. And the governor of Luhansk, in other news, advised that mobile internet has been cut off in this Russian-occupied area of Luhansk. So what actually happened is Russia ordered the local mobile operator to cut the remaining residents off mobile internet for quote-unquote security reasons. Now, this does not look good no matter which way you spin it. So I guess just off the top of my head, we'll start with, call it A. Russian forces don't trust locals giving away Russian positions back to Ukrainians. Which information like this is actually sold back to Ukraine from time to time, particularly from the Luhansk Oblast. I hear the news about more so. Let's say B, the next one, civilians in the Oblast can't go on the internet outside of their homes, so that's going to leave them pretty unhappy. And my next thought would be, this then leads to create further disdain for the Russian forces from the general civilian populace in the region. What are we up to, D or E? It's just such a draconian enforcement of the law. And it's by the Russians, who aren't even meant to be part of the controlling government here, but they are. And I guess lastly for now, I would say also that the Russian forces are scared their bases will be hit. So this is a really big concern for them. I believe I read another reason was not just the security reasons, but preventing of information exchange. So Russia has been sold out before, and they're doing whatever they can to not be sold out again. And in other news, the Kremlin, so really Russia or the political apparatus, acknowledges defeat for the first time since the beginning of the war, particularly with regards to the Kharkiv Oblast. So the Russian defense minister attempted to explain Russia's defeat similarly to the gesture of goodwill, quote unquote, of its withdrawal from Snake Island, or the decision to prioritize the quote-unquote liberation of the Donbass after its defeat around Kiev, but the response faced massive criticism online. So in other words, they're saying this is to plan, it's a gesture of goodwill, all we want is to go back to the Donbass and keep the fighting there. We never wanted up here in Kharkiv, and soon they'll say we never wanted Kherson too when that's taken back too. Oh, now this is really interesting with the take back of the Kharkiv Oblast in other news. So Russia asked Ukraine for negotiations amid the counteroffensive. Now, analysts said in response to this, this was aimed to stop the rapid Ukrainian advance, which truly did happen there, which is absolutely what it was. So one Russian military analyst probably said to the other, "We have no defensive power right now in the north of Kharkiv, really close to the Donbass. And, what do we do?" And then another one probably replied, "Well, let's pretend with diplomacy and negotiation talks until we rebuild our strength again." But the world stage has known for quite some time now that Russia cannot be measured by its words, only by its actions. And a bit of a funny to round off the day. So we have here a Russian helicopter struck a pillar of a bridge over the in the Dnipro River, which Nazis were actually trying to build during World War II. Then Russia tried to pass it off, this attack off as an attack on barges with actual Ukrainian troops on it. It's like they were trying to show some win in the Kherson region, and that's all they could come up with. So that's some good target practice right there, Rusky. Oh, and there's a couple of quick little lighter side of news things I want to show you. This is just a quick video of Russian forces surrendering to the Ukraine ZSU. It's like a special services unit of sorts, at least in this case, and it's quite somewhat blocked off with the digital pasties of sorts. So we actually don't know exactly where this is yet. It hasn't been confirmed. Probably likely to be in Kherson or the Kharkiv region at this point. And lastly, on the very lightest side of news, some footage here of a Ukrainian teacher is given a warm welcome back by his students after returning to visit from the front line in the war against Russia in Ukraine. So that's just lovely. Good old sight for sore eyes. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button. Don't pay too much attention to the trolls in the comments. They did go away for a few days. They've gone back to their propaganda offices, so to speak, and they've come back with new retorts. They don't normally make sense. They take things out of context, so don't worry about them too much. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.